There's a uncharted amount of misinformation online, especially in regards to your health. What would you say is the worst piece of health information that the general public believes to be true?
I think right now one of the biggest things, and we are seeing a shift in the fitness industry, is just the fact that everyone is what the doctor says is true, or what the doctor prescribes, I should take and I have to take. And I think there's a big shift from noticing, okay, I'm taking this medication or the doctor says this and I'm still not getting better. And then people don't listen to what their body is saying. And I think that's the biggest piece of misinformation, is just what your doctor says goes.
How do you start to get in touch with how you feel rather than what people tell you you should feel?
That's a great question. I think you start to log your data, start to understand a little bit more what your symptoms are. You know, if you're bloating after a certain meal, start recording that. Maybe something that you're eating in that meal is what's causing the bloat. But first and foremost, become curious. Our baseline is not supposed to be uncomfortable. If we're not feeling well, not sleeping well, skin's breaking out, whatever this may be, it's really important that we understand and just acknowledge that that is not our baseline and it shouldn't be a baseline as a human being.
So I guess for men or women, are there telltale signs that people should be looking for that can lead them to recognize that this isn't working for them?
Yes. Well, it depends. It depends on really everything, and it depends on what the symptom is. But if we're going to talk about gut health, for instance, for men and women, eating something and then bloating, or you're waking up bloating in the morning, that's an issue too. You shouldn't be painfully distended after eating. So there's a difference between bloating by the end of the day because we're no longer fasting. So a lot of women will wake up in the morning, be like, I'm so lean. And we've fasted for 12 hours, 12 hours, however long you slept. And for men, it can be the same. It can be the same way where they go to bed at night pretty bloated. But when it's painful and it becomes an issue, or maybe your motility is slowed down, so you're not going to the restroom, maybe you're going to the restroom every 3 days. That's a problem, right? So there's different signals that your gut will tell you for men and women. They're the same. But
what does distended mean?
Distended means, like for a woman, for instance, if we're just looking at a woman's body, it'll look like she's pregnant, like starting to get pregnant. So it's hard, and it's usually rock hard simply because of the gas buildup in your gut. And men get it too, for sure.
So double click on gut health because it's something you specialize in as well. What would be if someone who's never done any type of testing, where would be a good place to start for someone to A, get a baseline of what their gut health is, and B, know where it should be without having to take this kind of conflicting information online? Where should someone look to?
Great question. So I always recommend an at-home test. Biome has a great at-home test. I really, really like Biome. Thorne just came out with one. I'm not sure how great that is. I haven't tried it yet. I actually just ordered it so that I could give it a test run. I think when it comes to discovering what your gut actually needs, you have to do an elimination diet. And people get all touchy about it because sometimes it can be a burden or whatever. But I'm telling you, if you can do 30 days of an elimination diet and stop the bloating and stop waking up in pain, actually have, every 24 hours, you have full motility, right? You're going to the bathroom every 24 hours. So you're not bloated, feeling light and comfortable. It's worth it. So the elimination diet is where I would start for sure if you want to get a baseline of how you're supposed to feel. Because if you eliminate all the things that are inflaming your gut, causing issues in your gut, you'll be able to start adding things back in, and you'll really be able to start to feel exactly what, say, Brussels sprouts do to your gut. After not eating something that may inflame your gut for 30 days, and then you eat that one thing, then you'll start to feel that I'm now distended way further than I should be, and it's painful. But the elimination diet is where I would start.
Well, it's interesting because that was the exact thing that had happened to my gut and my microbiome when we spoke about this a couple of years ago. It was red meat, Brussels specifically, that my body wasn't able to digest because of a deficiency in bifidobacterium, which is one of, I believe, 7 different types of microbiome. Done a little bit of research on this. And with what you led me to after understanding that and then leading me to the prebiotic that I started to supplement with, I no longer had that come down almost after eating red meat and Brussels, which is that or asparagus is one of my favorite staple meals.
So it's such a bummer.
But the fascinating thing is most people believe red meat and greens. They're like, okay, that's the picture of a healthy meal. But for my body, it wasn't actually serving me because my body didn't know how to break it down.
Right. You didn't have the bacteria in that specific strain of bacteria to digest the red meat the way that it needed to not upset your stomach.
And I had never done an elimination diet or anything like that in the past. Walk me through what that would look like if either you take me for an example or someone who's never done any type of dieting in the past. How do they start? What do they do? And how do they know what to track and what to not?
Another great question. I think it depends too. So from someone who comes from like a highly processed diet, the simple answer is go whole foods. Go whole foods, start slow. You're going to start, a lot of the times you'll start with something starchy like potatoes or sweet potatoes, simply because our bodies we're good at digesting those usually.
And so that would be the only thing you eat?
No, you would want to do like very clean. So you'll do chicken and sweet potatoes and maybe something that doesn't have a ton of fiber like spinach. The reason why I always say Brussels sprouts or asparagus, kale, cauliflower is because there's a lot of fiber in those vegetables. They're cruciferous vegetables, and it causes a lot of issues with your gut because you don't have the right bacteria to digest that fiber, insoluble fiber, and it creates bloat. And so a lot of people stay away from them sometimes because they hurt. So I would stay away from super, super high fibered insoluble fiber vegetables simply because they're known to cause upset anyways. So I would start with basic foods. Don't season too much. Don't use a ton of spice, and start slow with, again, very basic things. I also recommend when you're doing an elimination diet to do also supplement with like an omega, just to make sure you're getting enough
like an omega-3.
Yeah, just to make sure you're getting enough fats, because a lot of times people will eliminate a bunch of fancy things like fish and avocado and stuff like that. So you just want to make sure you're still getting the anti-inflammatory.
And how long would I then need to eat the chicken and sweet potato for before I start to add other things into my diet?
30 days.
Oh, really?
30 days is what I would recommend.
That would be the only thing you eat for 30 days?
With breakfast, you can do something like egg whites. Egg yolks tend to be inflammatory for a lot of people. The other thing that might make it easy is going towards a Mediterranean diet. So a lot of times that's a really anti-inflammatory diet because it's so high in omegas and it's very whole. But that's where I would probably start. Very simple meals, very simple starches, simple proteins. Chicken, I don't see that really at all on gut tests. And then again, low fiber vegetables like spinach.
What would you do if someone didn't eat meat?
I think with not eating meat, it's tough. If it was a male, I probably would stay away from soy products. So now it gets a little tricky for sure because they have to get enough protein. So usually we'll go towards a meal replacement drink or a protein drink that is based with pea protein. But I would stay away from soy products. Really,
specifically for men.
Yeah, I think women too. Especially if you're trying to heal your hormones and stuff like that as a woman. You just recently got off birth control. Soy products produce, they stimulate estrogen production. So I really try to steer men away from soy products. Same thing with women. We really don't need to be eating soy, in my opinion.
So chicken and sweet potato, do that for 30 days. What would be the next step that someone would want to reintroduce?
Yes. So if you are a big red meat eater, switch out one meal for red meat. If you start to get bloated, you feel heavy, maybe you have brain fog later that afternoon, that might be an inflammatory food. But your biggest signal is going to be bloat. That's the best place to start. And just keep a little log. You can go online and pull one up. They're everywhere, all over Google. Everyone has one now. So I have one. If you want one, you can just DM me and I'll send you mine.
And so you reintroduce a specific food. You only add that one food into your diet for how long?
Correct. So it'll be another, I mean, really, once you
should know pretty quickly.
You know very quickly, right. So then if the red meat upsets your stomach, then I would the next day go back to that the clean that doesn't hurt, the clean diet that doesn't hurt. Then from there, I would integrate Brussels sprouts instead of spinach, something like that. And if you get bloated and you get distended, then that's probably a good sign that that's an inflammatory food. The easiest way to do this, though, honestly, is just to spend the $140 or $180 to get the gut test.
Yeah. So then from the test without having to do the extended period of time.
Most people don't want to do the elimination diet because it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So
do you see anyone ever create adaptations to specific foods that they've had in their diet for so long? So their baseline of, say, eating red meat that is inflammatory for them, they believe that's what life is supposed to feel like. And when they do this and shift, they're like, oh, I never experienced this amount of energy, or what would be the things that someone would look for or be able to see if that was the case?
Energy is a big one. Brain fog in the middle of the day is huge. A lot of my heavy carb eaters, once we reduce the amount of starchy carbs or sugary carbs, white starches, pastas, things like that, and we switch it to whole grains and maybe limit the amount of whole grains, or that we work on timing of those whole grains, the brain fog disappears in the afternoon. So that happens a lot with my clients who are maybe on keto. They do really well on high fat, and then they're great energy wise, but we have to get them there. So they're eating a lot of carbs, and they switch to more of a ketogenic diet, and then they have great energy throughout the day, and they don't get that brain fog. Brain fog is a big one. Sleep. And then also first thing in the morning is, if you're rolling out of bed in the morning and you're just dragging, that's a huge sign that we're not optimized. That's a huge, huge sign.
So when you wake up, you should feel like you're ready to take on the day.
Ready to go. Yeah, you should absolutely feel like you're ready to go within 5-10 minutes of waking up. The other thing a lot of people do is they roll over and grab their phone. And that's another thing that actually interrupts your wake up cycle. So if you can spend 30 minutes to an hour away from your phone in the morning, you might get a better read on your energy levels in the morning.
What are some other common things that people do that prevent them from having the maximum levels of energy that they would want within their day?
Screen time at night is a big one. Processed sugars, candy, ice cream, all the stuff we know is not being great for us. That's another big one. But I think the biggest thing for sleep is screen time, stress. And I say sleep because sleep is obviously so important.
The foundation
as we know,
of everything that we do.
Everything. And it helps your gut heal. It helps your hormones, cortisol, stress, quite literally everything that we do. So when we have the screen time at night, that's bad. An hour, turn it off an hour before bed. And then the sugar, I would say, are probably the two biggest in stress.
Yeah.
But that's not something that we're really consuming. We're just causing.
Or depending on what you consume can cause it as
True.
well.
Right.
And I'm not perfect with this, but one of the things that I tried to do is not be on, phone off. And so I've set my phone. You can go in and set automation. You know me with systems.
Yeah, right.
You can go in and set automated cycles to shift your phone to a different do not disturb setting. So I have my sleep setting go from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. so that it doesn't even matter if someone texts or calls me. I would have to physically be on my phone to see the notification.
Yeah, it's great.
I feel at first, and I still check it now and again, and it's also, I forget to do my Spanish homework, and I am like, Duolingo till 10 o'clock at night. Not the smartest move, guys. No. But I realized that at first, I felt like I was missing out on something if I didn't respond immediately. But as soon as I began to remove that conditioning, that putting my phone down and unplugging was actually one of the best turnoffs for my day that I could possibly have.
How did you remove that conditioning? Because that conditioning is tough. It's tempting. It's the instant gratification, vibrates and you're like,
well, so there's no vibration. I get no notifications on my phone, period. Like even throughout the day, if the only way to get in touch with me is between 10 and 5, you have to call twice in order for it to go through. If you're in my contacts, if you're not in my contacts, it doesn't even go through. The only thing that I have notifications, like the banner notifications on to the little circle, is messages. Nothing else on my phone shows an actual notification symbol. I have to click into it to see what notifications are there. So I'm not swiping on something and see, Instagram notification, pop it up. I'm not great with that because then my mind goes to, okay, maybe I have a notification. Let's go check it. And I've caught myself checking more than I could have if I knew that there was a zero. It's done the opposite effect here. But I would say, to answer the question, I think that it was more committing to myself. It's an internal thing. because you have access to it. And unless you say like, I'm going to do this thing, you feel the pull for it. And it's the same thing as if you go out in public and you don't have your phone on you, you feel like naked because your phone's not in your pocket. And what I did at first was I used to carry my phone in my right pocket and I started to put it in my left. And I felt like I had lost my phone a lot because I would reach for it in the right, it's not there, it's in my left pocket, it's still in my person. Then I would put it in my back pocket and then I would leave it at home and go for like a short 20, 30-minute walk. That way I could put it down somewhere and not need it. And then I started to charge it outside of my room. And then I charge it in my room now, but I might move it back outside of the room because I have an alarm clock in the room now and you don't need it for that. But I would say the biggest piece for me was alternating the stimulus. So not always, because you're conditioned to have it in one place rather than in somewhere else, and then it's no longer the habit. It's you consciously choosing to go after it.
Right. I love that. I think that's brilliant.
So we have elimination diet. You can go gut test if you want to simplify this process.
Yes.
People can, if they do go the elimination route, they're going to slowly introduce things and then track what it is that they're changing or feeling or what's coming up for them. Keeping the phone off before they go to bed as well as first thing in the morning. Are there any other inputs or things that people can do to maximize their energy?
Well, I mean, that's a huge rabbit hole for sure. Yeah, there are. And again, it starts with sleep. So the food matters. Healing your gut matters for sure. Everything begins in your gut. I don't think a lot of people really understand how important the gut health is. And it also is in direct correlation with your hormones, men and women.
Yes.
There's what they've coined it as is the gut brain axis. And it essentially links your gut and your brain neurologically. And so if your gut's off, everything else is off, including your sleep, because your sleep is regulated by hormones and your circadian rhythm. So as far as energy goes, I would always start with your gut. Everything starts there. And then you'll start to see your sleep patterns changing and getting better. The other thing that I highly recommend if you want to supplement is magnesium glycinate. Magnesium is massively important. Most people don't get enough of it. And so I always say adding a magnesium glycinate supplement will help your sleep patterns. And it also helps your gut too. Helps a lot of other things. But
how much should someone supplement?
Depends on your current diet. I usually say between 400 and 500 milligrams. Google will tell you about 300, 350. But most in functional medicine will tell you a little bit higher. And for women specifically, you can dose a little bit higher right before your period, and it'll help those menstrual cramps quite a bit.
And you take that before bed?
Before bed. 30 minutes to an hour before bed, if you can remember it. It's not going to kill you if you take it right before bed. Just make sure and stay upright for a little bit so it gets to your tummy before you go sideways.
Other than magnesium, are there any other supplements that you would recommend everyone take?
For sleep?
For sleep, gut health, or for energy levels?
I always, before recommending any supplement, I always look at a panel, get someone to work with you on a panel, even if it's a doctor, because you could be supplementing with, say, zinc, and you don't need zinc, or you're getting too much zinc, and then you have to supplement with copper so that you don't, it's just like, it's the balance of everything.
Yes.
So magnesium is a big one. Omegas, that's another one. Anti-inflammatory supplement, massively important for gut health, brain health, muscle health, all the health. So those two, and a probiotic, prebiotic. And then if you don't eat a lot of whole foods, I always recommend a really good multivitamin. But those are probably my 5, just coming from the functional med type of side.
So it sounds like there's a lot that people can do. And if they want to kind of reverse engineer this and start very simplistically, is there a go-to diet or daily regimen that you would recommend as being the baseline where someone can start? Taking a break from this episode to remind you that your inputs matter. This show was created to help you build a high-performing, healthy, wealthy life. And if you feel that you're getting value from this episode, please go ahead and share it with someone who you feel would benefit as well. Now, fun fact, over 90% of our listenership is not actually subscribed to the show, so it would mean the world to me if you went ahead and tapped that subscribe button. Thank you for being here. Now back to the show.
I would say the Mediterranean diet. That probably would be my choice for everybody. And I try to stick to it as much as possible simply because it is, well, as you know, it's proven to be one of the best diets for not only your health, but also lifespan. They go hand in hand, obviously. But there's all whole foods, a ton of omegas. It's fresh. The vegetables are obviously fresh as well. They don't eat a lot of processed foods. It's a very simple diet, and that's probably where I start. But most importantly, it's anti-inflammatory, and that helps your gut and your body.
So walk me through a perfect day of if someone was on a Mediterranean diet or anything that you alter in your own life as well. Walk me through a perfect day, wake up to go to bed. What does that routine or that diet look like?
With me specifically, I know my sensitivities. So I would always say start with eggs. Eggs have a bad rap. I don't want to dive into that hole, but eggs have a really bad rap. But really, yolk is nature's multivitamin. There's so many great things in a yolk. The one thing that I say look for when you buy eggs is make sure it's pasture raised. And when that yolk comes out, it should be orange. It should not be light yellow. It should be bright orange, which is how you know it came from a good chicken.
We spoke about this the other day.
Yes. Right. So I always say eggs, there's omegas there. Cook it in avocado oil, not in olive oil. Olive oil is not a high heat oil. It turns into carcinogen at a certain temperature. Avocado, high heat. So for all my cookers out there, avocado oil is important for heat. Eggs, I always spinach, garlic. Some people can't eat garlic. It's not on a low FODMAP diet. It's
a low what map?
It's called FODMAP, and it's sometimes that can be upsetting to people's guts. Garlic, onions.
What's a FODMAP?
So there's low FODMAP diet, which is the easiest way I can put it is it's a clean diet. It's very, very clean, and it is for people who get. I'm not really sure what exactly. There's a few things that are not in low FODMAP foods, and I don't remember exactly what they are. I don't use it a bunch, but sometimes I have clients that come to me and they're like, I'm on a low FODMAP diet now, but it's really usually because they blow really bad with certain foods like onions and garlic, nuts, things like that. Not sure exactly what mineral it is though, off the top of my head. I failed at that question.
Okay. So start with eggs.
Eggs, spinach.
Sometimes garlic.
Sometimes garlic for me. And then half an avocado. Avocado is, if you like avocado or you can stomach it, I always say an avocado a day. There's this huge study that came out, not to get too off topic, really quick, plug avocados for a second. There was a huge study that came out that avocados actually really help reduce visceral fat, which is the fat that surrounds your organs. They're just brilliant for fat loss, for anti-inflammatory reasons. And so I eat an avocado a day at least usually. So if you can add an avocado, great. Then for lunch, then I always say a big salad. If you can get fish in 3-4 times a week, great. Most diets will recommend once a week. If you're getting fish 3-4 times a day or a week, if you're getting fish 3-4 times a week.
A lot of fish per day.
That's terrifying.
Any specific
terrifying.
Fish?
Cold water fish usually has better omega-3 content.
Okay.
So cod, sardines, salmon's a great one too.
Okay.
So big salad, lots of nuts, used an olive oil-based dressing. And then for dinner, same thing, veggies and fish or veggies and meat. And you can eat a big plate. You can eat a lot of protein and a lot of veggies, nuts. The whole point is to make it very clean. Your fats come from nuts, fish, oil. And then your proteins are also clean. Chicken, fish, beef. Beef is not necessarily a huge one in the Mediterranean diet, but once a week is fine. It's grass-fed.
So olive oil for cold, avocado oil for hot. What about snacking throughout the day?
I would say nuts. Nuts is there. Everyone says, I say everyone lightly, but nuts are high calorie. So a lot of times it's not a good mindless snacking. But I always say more veggies. Hummus is great. If you can eat veggies and hummus, that's awesome. And nuts throughout the day. Protein shake is great. It's not necessarily Mediterranean, but if you're needing to get in that protein, which most people do, throw in a clean protein shake like Owen or Orgain.
Are there specific times you would recommend eating, or is this more of eat when your body's hungry kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's hunger is a signal, hormonal signal, and it depends. So before bed, you don't want to eat close to bed. If you can wait three hours, eat, and then 3 hours bedtime. So the earlier you can eat before bed, the better. That way your body shuts off and focuses on sleeping and not digesting. As far as the morning goes, hunger there will depend on your cortisol levels. So cortisol will, if you're waking up and you're not hungry in the morning and you don't get hungry till 11 or 12, and you tend to lead a more stressful life, that usually will tell me, just if I was your coach, that your cortisol levels are high. You should be waking up very hungry when in the morning. It means you've pretty much nailed your calories for the day. And assuming that you're not waking up, or in the morning hungry, right? It's a healthy hungry, but you should be waking up in the morning hungry. Tells me everything's pretty stable.
And if what would be the alternative to that? You're waking up and not being hungry until
not being hungry at all.
Because there are people who fast for the first part of their day. Would that be something you don't recommend?
It's not that I don't recommend it. That's the hard thing about what we do is there's something for everybody. Fasting, if that works for you in your day, great. Sometimes it doesn't work hormonally for my women, but it's if it works for you, great. Just make sure to break your fast with protein and high fat. Don't break it with, if you put anything in your coffee, you're technically breaking your fast. A lot of people will argue with me on that. A lot of people would put, the brain octane oil or whatever, MCT oil in their coffee. That's breaking a fast. You're integrating calories into morning.
Yeah.
So
break it with proteins or fats.
Yes. That way it doesn't spike your blood sugar.
And if you're planning on not breaking it, black coffee.
Yeah, you can have black coffee, but other than that, I wouldn't break it until noon.
You spoke a little bit before about high insoluble fiber foods. The thing that helped me was a fiber-based prebiotic. What's the difference between the fiber that I take and the fiber that's in those high insoluble fiber foods?
There isn't much difference. A prebiotic is insoluble fiber, and it's essentially, prebiotic is corn that you're taking. Yeah. So that prebiotic is insoluble fiber. And that's why a lot of the times when you eat Brussels sprouts, kale, any cruciferous vegetables, you might get gurgly and might bloat a little bit because your body doesn't have the bacteria to digest it. So with that prebiotic, we're able to integrate that fiber more consistently, and then your gut builds a tolerance for the prebiotic or the insoluble fiber. So then that bloat and that gas and the uncomfortable feeling disappears because we've now created a microbiome that can actually process the insoluble fiber.
You're actually aiding your body's own ability to produce what it needs to break down that type of food.
Correct. Yes. Most people only get between 5 and 6, maybe 8 grams of fiber a day. And we should be getting between 30 and 50 grams for our gut. Our gut really needs that fiber because our diets are so processed. So you and I, someone who's we eat a lot of whole foods and whole grains. And when we do choose to eat grains, they're whole most of the time. Potatoes don't really have a ton of fiber, but my point is most people don't eat like you and I. So when you are eating a ton of processed foods, because they're highly processed, we don't get that insoluble fiber. They're not using the right ingredients. We just need that whole food insoluble fiber for our gut to be healthy, to design a microbiome that is healthy for us.
It's interesting because when I first started taking it, the first couple of days, I think we spoke about this too. The first couple of days I started taking it, I almost felt sick.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was on that or if I took AG1 too. I think that was the piece that made me sick. Yeah. Because I remember taking a full scoop on an empty stomach, and an hour later I was about
green.
I was as green as the greens that I drank. And I wish it had said on there to start with a quarter of a scoop or start with half a scoop and introduce that into your diet, because it's the same thing. Little anecdotally, the first time I recognized the importance of diet was when I came back from Bali the first time. And I ate basically for 40 days an entire organic whole food, raw food diet. Wouldn't be raw food, but it'd be whole foods. And I remember I came back, I landed in LA and I had In-N-Out. And
gosh, how'd that go?
I didn't go to the bathroom for 5 days. And I almost had to be hospitalized.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. this is actually pretty funny.
You've never told me this story.
We can go down this. So I came back. I was in college at the time, and I had in and out. 3 days go by. I realized after the third day, like, yeah, I haven't gone to the bathroom yet, and like my stomach kind of hurts. And then the fourth day, I remember I went to work, and I asked my manager at the time. I was like, so yeah, I haven't gone to the bathroom. This is kind of weird. But my stomach kind of hurts, and they told me to drink Smooth Move tea. So
Jeez, Louise.
I go home, I drink the Smooth Move tea, I go back to work. This is the 5th day now that I haven't gone to the bathroom. I go, I drink the tea, nothing happened. They go, no. You got to let it steep for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes before you drink it. And I just like put the tea bag in, a couple minutes, took it out, drank it. Nothing happened. Forgot to do it that night. This is the 6th day. I wake up the 6th day. I steep the tea for probably 45 minutes. I drink the tea. I go to work. I get to work. I'm like 30 minutes into my shift. I say, I gotta go.
It's time.
I literally told him I have to go home. And I went home, and I just sent my manager a photo of a book that was probably 400 pages long. And I said, I'm going to be here for
He's like, okay. Didn't need to know.
So long story in all of that, I recognize the importance of food in that, and how everything that you consume, the input of what you consume dictates the output of everything that your body does. And I've had a relatively good diet, but I've always tried to find like what works here, what doesn't work, and stick to it as much as I can. Something that I found that's worked for me really well is I didn't eat eggs for a long time. I reintroduced eggs a couple of years ago, and that was
the
huge.
Whole egg?
Whole egg. Huge for me. Also eating some type of high fat first thing when I wake up, within 30 minutes of waking. So right now I'll have like whatever it is, 8 to 12 ounces of Greek yogurt with some berries on it, and then maybe a scoop of peanut butter. So it's the whole Tim Ferriss 4-hour body thing, where it's the 30, 30, 30. So 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking, and then 30 minutes of cardio. And my cardio is more extensive than probably what he recommends in the book. And then I have a protein shake, come home, have a protein shake, and then I eat my first meal, which is the eggs, probably 4 or 5 eggs, sausage, and avocado around noon. But the thing that shifted for me that's helped a lot is I eat high protein in the afternoons and then high carbs at night. I recognize that I sleep better that way. So I used to do pasta in the afternoon, steak with dinner, and I flip-flop those, and my sleep scores have like added 10, 15, 20 points. And not only that, my HRV while I'm sleeping and my resting heart rate has dropped too. Are there any other pieces that you'd recommend for people, like carbs before bed rather than in the afternoon? Or are there certain common themes that you've found that work best for the vast majority of people?
The vast majority of people will probably do better on a higher carb diet before bed.
Okay.
Some of my women that have hormone issues, I probably would stay away from the carbs before bed, simply because of blood sugar regulation. All my PCOS girls shouldn't be doing that. So, but other than that, yeah, carbs can be really great at night. So for dessert, you eat fruit instead. The other thing that I wanted to mention about your diet specifically, for anyone listening to this who can't have dairy, a good alternative to Greek yogurt in the morning would be coconut yogurt with a scoop of unflavored collagen. So you're still getting that protein first thing.
You're making your own protein yogurt, basically.
Correct. Yeah. And adding some nuts in there if you want some fats first thing in the morning. But that was just a side note that I was thinking about, because I have a lot of women that can't have dairy. Hormonally, it's a problem. So
what's an alternative to that if you don't want to eat yogurt every morning?
Like a protein shake first thing, or have your first meal, have the egg, sausage, and avocado. That's what I do. I wake up and within 30 minutes I have egg whites though, because I don't have the yolk.
Why don't you have the yolk?
Because it's inflammatory for me.
Okay. And B, do you ever feel that eating a full meal like that makes you feel heavy first thing in the morning?
No. Oh my gosh, no. I think every time I have a grain, so if I have toast or something along those lines, that's when I feel heavy, like it's too much. Sometimes I'll have like avocado toast on a little whole grain English muffin, or it's like Dave's Killer Bread. It's like there's like 18 grams of protein packed in this little tiny English muffin. So it's a smaller meal.
And it's high fiber too.
High fiber. Yeah, correct. So I don't really see there's no heaviness that comes from sausage, eggs, and avocado for me in the morning. And I think our schedules might be a little bit different because you usually eat and then go work out, where I'll eat and then I'll eat a full meal, then I'll work, and I work out midday. But that's the difference, is I don't crash at 2, 3, and I don't think you do either. But correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, I crave a coffee around that time, but I wouldn't call it a crash.
Yeah, no. Okay. Yeah.
I also, my first coffee I'll have at probably 11.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll have that protein shake. So I'll work out, have the protein shake, and then I'll work for about 2-3 hours. Then I'll have the eggs and sausage. I'll take Loca for a walk. I'll pick up a coffee at the end of that walk, and then when I dive back into work, I'm having the coffee with my afternoon work.
Right.
And then often in the afternoon, I think it's more of a condition thing. I want to get up, stretch my legs, and go outside. So then I'll be like, oh yeah, what's a good reason for me to go out? I'll go grab a coffee across the street, and that's like a walk for me.
One thing that's really wonderful that you're doing is that you're not waking up and drinking coffee first thing in the morning. It's the biggest mistake I see. I work only with women, but same thing with men. I think that men can also benefit from it, because what the coffee does, our cortisol levels are highest in the morning, and they're meant to be to get us out of bed in the morning and get us energized and up and ready for the day. We don't need to have any more of that signaling to our body, like, hey, get up and move. Caffeine does that. Caffeine is inflammatory. It signals our body like, hey, it triggers the fight or flight response in us, even at subtle levels. So if you can wait an hour before drinking coffee, if you must start your day with coffee, wait an hour. I still wouldn't recommend it. I would still recommend having your coffee with a meal or later on in the day if you have trouble sleeping before noon. But you can drink coffee all day long and not have an issue. I've never seen anything like it. That's pretty incredible.
I know. We've traveled extensively together, and you're like, it's on his 7th espresso of the day, and he's taking a nap. We don't know what's going on.
Something's wrong. I think something might be wrong.
That was something that I learned from, I want to say it was Chris Williamson, Modern Wisdom podcast.
I love his podcast.
He had someone on that was talking about, or was it? I want to say he had someone on that was like, quote unquote, the coffee expert. But something that they talked about was coffee works on your adenosine receptors in the brain, and it actually inhibits your body's ability to process cortisol. So it's not actually making you less sleepy, it's inhibiting your body's ability to feel sleepiness. The alternative to that is actually having salts first thing in the morning. So adding some salt to your water actually works with your body's response, I guess, and or it works in tandem with your body's natural ability to process cortisol. So you're helping it rather than inhibiting it.
Yes. Yeah, I always start my day with electrolytes. It's the first thing that goes in my body is electrolytes, water. Within 30 minutes, I'm eating, and then I'll make my coffee with breakfast. But I always start my day with electrolytes.
I do too, but I've been thinking about it lately. I don't know. So this is my thought process right now. I don't know if because I wake up extremely thirsty. It could just be I haven't drank anything for 8 hours.
Or you sit in the sauna for 3 hours.
So this is my dilemma. Is it A, I'm chronically dehydrated? B, I need to use some type of mouth tape and breathe through my nose while I sleep because my mouth just dries out because I don't know if I mouth breathe or not. I don't snore, but who knows? Or C, I like after moving to this place have used the sauna every single day. So it may be a mixture of A and C, chronically dehydrated because of the sauna use, and I just need to drink more.
When you run, do you cramp?
No.
No cramping. There's no like signs of dehydration other than you're waking up super thirsty in the morning.
No.
Yeah, most people do wake up super thirsty because you've just gone 8
to whatever
10 hours without water. So I think if you're not having any other like headaches is another big one. If you're not having any of those, then you're probably fine.
Now, the only headaches that I would get is if I don't have any coffee in a day, which shows that I'm slightly dependent on caffeine, which means there might be a caffeine fast happening at some point here.
Yes, and you can wean off of it, just like you can go cold turkey, but it makes it hard to get work done if you're dealing with headaches. But you can wean off of coffee too.
I mean,
switch it for matcha.
That's true. I heard matcha actually has more caffeine than coffee, but it's a different type of caffeine. Interesting. I mean, I have 2 cups of coffee a day. It's not anything crazy. When I'm at home, when I'm traveling, I'm having. That's the thing. When I come,
you're wild.
But I just like to have like to have something, and coffee is always a great way to go explore a city too. So I do drink, and I notice every time I come back from a prolonged trip that I find myself having to wean myself off a bit because I'm wanting to drink 3, 4, 5 cups. Not great.
Not great. No. Once you start drinking electrolytes in the morning, and you might be able to relate to this, but I used to be a huge coffee drinker. Wake up, I'd have like 2 doubles in my coffee, right? So I was making a cup of coffee and then adding a double and then maybe another if I was feeling crazy. And
you still do sometimes.
You're
like,
you're
this
right.
is the quad shot. Let's get the Monday going. I'm like, Sam, it's 5 a.m. What are you doing?
My bad. I should stop. But it's with food now. But when I was doing that, I was craving it so heavily in the morning because everyone wakes up and they're like, oh, I can't wait for my cup of coffee. And when you start to wean off of that habit and start doing electrolytes instead, sometimes you'll go the whole day without coffee and you won't even realize that you hadn't had coffee. So it's just a different stimulus in the morning, but it's healthier stimulus for sure.
Yeah. Let's shift gears to hormones. I know this is something that you're like, wow, I'm so excited. This is, I think, a big topic right now, especially amongst women.
Yes.
And I heard you speaking about this the other night. If someone wanted to, let's start very rudimentary, very basic.
Sure.
Someone hears that they need to get their hormones checked or that their hormones may be out of balance. What would they look for? What would they have to experience to think that, A? And B, where is the best place for them to start to get a full panel done?
So I always say before you go into your doctor, arm yourself with knowledge. Because if your doctor says, oh, no, you're fine, which is what a lot of women hear if they're experiencing fatigue, brain fog, hair loss, acne on your chin and jawline, like all the bloating, all these things. There's actually a very long list of symptoms that come from hormones because your endocrine system is so big. It could be your thyroid, your adrenals, it could be your ovaries, it could be your testicles. If you're a man, it doesn't matter. There's different symptoms for each organ that could be off. So it's kind of a loaded question just simply because it varies so much. But the one thing that I say is if you are having symptoms, try not to go too far into Dr. Google because it gets a little scary. But if you know it's not right, if in your gut says, this is not right, I should not be feeling this way, then start to look into those symptoms, what it could potentially mean, and start learning about what it could potentially mean before you go into your doctor. Because a lot of the times your doctor there's a time and a place for Western medicine, but a lot of times the doctors shy you away and say, yeah, I don't know if you need a blood panel.
Do you think that everyone should have a blood panel?
I do. I always think it's great to know what's going on the inside. That and a mineral panel too. So vitamin deficiencies are also huge because we're so processed. Our food is so processed. Not we. You and I are not processed. But
what are you trying to say?
Huh? Like that came out totally wrong. But you knew what I meant. You nodded.
I know.
Yeah. So I always say yes. If you have the opportunity and insurance can cover it, yes. One of the biggest things specifically with female hormones is a lot of the times they don't test everything that you need in order to understand the full picture on what exactly is going on. That's the biggest, I think, problem with women's healthcare specifically is it's just normal. Oh, you're a mom with 3 kids. Of course you're going to be tired. You don't have to be tired.
How often should they get blood and mineral panels done?
It depends. If you're having a lot of really bad symptoms, I would say every quarter, every 3 months. And then especially if you're working on healing that. So that's the thing is only get them every quarter if you're focused on healing.
Get
and you want to see those
see
numbers,
where you're going, continue to improve.
Correct. And if you feel healthy and you feel fine, every year, just at your annual, get as much data as you can. Data is everything. Now you need to know how to interpret that data, and hopefully the doctor you're working with will help you do that. But a lot of the times when a doctor says, oh, this is average, you're fine, it's not optimal for us. So that's the big thing that functional med focuses on. And I'm not a functional med doctor. I would like to make that very clear. I'm certified. I'm not a doctor. But we've been doing this for now 4 or 5 years. We've been doing panels. And when I don't know the answer, I do go to a functional doc. So that's one thing that I'll never guess. Anyways, I just wanted to...
Yes. So this is something that you would recommend they approach their doctor with, or is there a place that they would go to online to order a panel if they wanted to do it themselves?
You can. Yeah, there's for women's hormones specifically, Everlywell is a great at-home panel. But yes, you can order. There's quite a few at-home kits actually. And for men, there's not a ton actually. I haven't dove too far into it, so maybe don't quote me on this, but There's a lot of testosterone. You can test testosterone, and it's easy for men to test testosterone because your cycle is 24 hours. Or for women, if you're testing female hormones, you're going to test through the course of your cycle. So that test actually lasts you about 28 days. You'll test through your cycle at different phases.
What are the primary things that they should be testing for or looking at?
Or what? To make sure that they are in good condition?
Yeah, hormone testing for women. Or does it vary, again, person to person?
Varies. It varies. There's an average that we can stay in. Again, it may not be optimal, but there's an average. And then that would be, it's a lot of numbers. Honestly, I don't know a ton off the top of my head. I have a notebook that I work with alongside of protocol when I'm looking at panels just to make sure I don't screw anything up. But yeah, there's optimal ranges that tend to be higher and more balanced than what a doctor will read.
Are there any specifics in terms of, that these are the top 3 things that are often imbalanced that should be corrected for or should be reviewed?
For men and women or?
Yeah, or is it different for men and women? Or are there these are the 3 primary that both men and women should be reviewing?
The ranges will be different for men and women, but for women specifically, actually for men and women, I would say cortisol. That's a big one. You want to check that. And then also your blood sugar. I also love doing that with my girls. So my girls, I don't work with men, but blood sugar is important, how your body regulates. That will also correlate with your cortisol. So blood sugar, your fasting blood sugar after your first meal, you'll get a range there. It'll be different for men and women, but that's a great one to see how your body processes sugar. And then I think the last one that I would choose for men and women is if you're having any weight issues. So if your weight is stubborn and you feel like you're doing everything right and you just can't seem to get it off, it's probably your thyroid. I say that lightly because a lot of people come to me and they're like, yeah, I'm doing everything right. And they've really been doing a lot of it wrong. So sometimes it's not thyroid, or if you lose a lot of weight really, really quick. So that tends to be a signal for thyroid issues as well. So for men and women, that's probably what I would focus on.
So people come to you assuming that they're doing things correct because they're getting false information, or just because they heard through the grapevine, this is what you're supposed to be looking at?
I think both. There's a lot of coaches out there that get really quickly certified and then they say restrict calories and do a lot of exercise. And for women, especially now, there's been this huge wave of women who are going off of birth control. And because of that, our bodies are essentially now our bodies have a voice. And I say our because that was me. I went off birth control a couple years ago. And now our bodies have a voice. So it's a screaming, like all the symptoms are coming out in full force because they've been covered up for so long. And so when we stop taking birth control and we start to work through all of these symptoms, it's so important, I think, to make sure that we create a new baseline for our bodies. Like we have to listen. We have to take those symptoms and go to our doctors and say, this is what it is. And if your doctor says, no, you're fine, this is normal, this is how it's supposed to be, go somewhere else. Find somebody else that will actually listen to you.
Yeah. You talked to Leah about this the other day. If a woman is planning on getting off birth control, there were a couple of things that you recommend they do prior to actually stopping birth control. Walk me through or explain that to me as if I was a child and don't understand any of this. Where would someone begin and why?
Yes. So I would begin with one, it depends on what your panels say. So that's kind of the hard thing about this is it is so complex for women specifically. You have to know, if you have PCOS, endometriosis, there's different things that could potentially be going on. I would say in general, there are things that you can be doing. And usually what the issue is inflammation. So you got to get your gut right. It goes back to your gut. Your gut, birth control specifically, it creates issues with your gut lining and it makes it permeable, especially if you're on birth control for a long time. So when I say permeable, it means everything that's coming into your gut that's toxic or something that shouldn't be in your bloodstream, or maybe it can't regulate how much is going into your bloodstream anymore, that's an issue. They're often referred to now as leaky gut. So birth control will actually do that to a lot of most women that I see coming off birth control. So if you're going to go off of birth control at some point, start really focusing on gut health and bringing that inflammation down. Omegas, prebiotic, that insoluble fiber, and reduce the processed foods that you're eating and reduce sugar. Sugar is massively inflammatory to our bodies. So those are the 4 things I would do to start working on your gut and cleaning up your diet. Obviously, I think that's a given.
All types of sugar, or are there healthy sugars as well?
There are healthy sugars, fruits, and there are some sugars and vegetables as well. I'm talking more processed sugar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think in the past, and this is a male's perspective on it as well, in the past, I viewed it almost as birth control was a good thing for women. And I think that was the narrative we were told in the past. And now it's coming out that it's actually extremely detrimental to women's health. Is there ever, which side are you on? And is there ever a time that birth control, I think I know, but is there ever a time that birth control is something that would be healthy for a woman?
Yes, I think there are extreme cases of endometriosis where you do need to be on birth control. In the extreme cases, that helps. But we want to prevent our bodies from getting to the extreme cases, right? That's something that a lot of the times we can help ourselves out with without getting on birth control too early. It's some number like 60% of women get on birth control for things other than not getting pregnant, which is crazy to me. That over half of users of birth control, hormonal birth control specifically, are taking it because they have bad skin or their cramps are so bad, or and I think that's unbelievable. If we would start there, right when those symptoms happen, your body's screaming at you. So start there and try to bring those, resolve those symptoms. And you might not get to that extreme level of PCOS, the extreme level of endometriosis. You don't want to hit the extremes. And a lot of the times it's preventable.
Got it.
A lot of the time.
Got it. How about, so we talked a bit at the beginning about tracking. And I know you wear an Oura ring.
Yes.
Is that your go-to for a wearable?
Yes, it is. I don't track my activity level as much anymore. My Garmin was really great for that, but I don't really track the calories burned anymore. One, I don't count my calories anymore, and there's about a 20 to 45% variance in what calories you're actually burning. So that no wearable really tracks it all that well. So I don't really keep track of activity anyways. So everything but activity, I love the Oura thing for.
What is the primary reason you use your Oura ring for?
Tracking and sleep. So tracking my cycle and sleep. It integrates with natural cycles. And so I'm able to figure out when I could potentially get pregnant. But what I love so much about it is that you can track your symptoms too. So again, symptoms it's a signal from your body saying something's wrong, right? And so when I have, when I'm not sleeping well before my period, or maybe I'm super moody and irritable, maybe one time I have a super heavy period, or maybe consecutive days or consecutive cycles in a row I have heavy periods. Those are all signs and symptoms. I think we need to transition the period thing and the symptoms of periods to a positive thing, because it's really a beautiful thing. Your body's working like it's supposed to. But if those symptoms get too bad, your body is telling you something. And a lot of women just ignore it and go, it's just normal. And it's really not. So the natural cycles helps you track the symptoms and become really hyper aware of what's actually going on in your body. And so that's why I really like natural cycles, but Oura Ring does that through body temperature.
And is a wearable something you recommend every woman have at some point? Or is it once you can figure out the dates and times, you're like, let's use it for a couple of months and then get off of it? Or is it more of a long-term thing?
Long-term, for sure. Because our bodies are constantly changing. And every 7 to 10 years as women, we go through this huge shift. And then not to mention, we'll hit menopause and, we shift all the time. So keeping track of this, I think, is massively important. I think again, data is key. The more data you have on yourself, the better the understanding of your baseline. And then once you deviate from that baseline, that's when either above, when you optimize, or you go below, you'll be hypersensitive to those signals, and you'll be able to correct it in an instant because you're hyper aware, because you understand the data.
You and I both love the data.
Yes.
we know that based on what we track and the internal spreadsheets and shit that we've created and shared with each other. Someone who is fearful of the data, and doesn't want to dive deep into knowing all these things, which I think from my perspective, it's often because they are afraid of what they're going to find out. And I know when I was interviewing people for Baseline, a lot of people said that they don't want to check certain things because they don't want to know, essentially, like, I know I slept like shit. I don't want it to tell me that because then it just makes me feel worse. Someone who doesn't want to know or have this much data on them or have their data on a wearable, where would you recommend they start?
With tracking the data or just the piece of data that they're...
The piece, so that the data would give them an insight into their stress response, into their sleep, into, activity and their and regulation as well. If someone didn't want to track that with something scientific or something quantitative, would you go strictly off of feel? Or is there a specific, let's focus on, like, maybe the bloat is the piece. Is there a specific piece that you would say, if you don't want to track your data and you want to do this extremely simply, where should someone look?
Look, without doubt, I don't think there's much to look at. But I think as far as feeling and symptoms go, sleep is a big one. We keep going back to sleep, but that, again, it's going to change everything. So a lot of the times when you get bad sleep, your gut is funky for the rest of the day. I don't know if you get that way. Yeah. My gut is hypersensitive. So if I don't sleep, I'm like just bloated and kind of gurgly, and it's just not working right, you know? So I think beginning the correlation between how you feel and your sleep is the most basic starting point that you should start paying attention to. I think that's probably it. I wouldn't complicate it. If that's what you want to, if you want the most basic, then that's
Loca's food.
Scared me.
For those listening and not watching, in my office, I have my dog's automated food machine.
That's a scary
and it just went off, and Sam nearly jumped out of her seat.
Yeah.
So sleep is what we're going to focus on, and it really is the key to everything. I know when I don't sleep well, like you said, I'll get stomach pains for no reason, and doesn't feel great. In regards to health, and this has been extremely informative, so thank you very much, Sam. But
of course.
In regards to health, are there any questions that I haven't asked that I should be?
Great question. I think with women's health specifically, do you mind if I dive into the women's health? The biggest thing, there's a ton of supplementation that you can do around specific hormones that are off. And so I don't want women to lose hope when a doctor says, this isn't, this, you're fine. This looks good. There's nothing wrong. Even though we know in our gut, we're right, that there is wrong. Listen to that sixth sense. Women are blessed with a sixth sense. Use it. There's natural supplementation that you can do. Men too, to optimize, increase energy, increase sleep, productivity, things like that. But I think specifically with women's hormones, it's so important that you just understand and are aware that there's always a solution. And I just wanted to emphasize that, because a lot of women and men feel like they're lost or there's no hope. And I think when you lose hope, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a specific question, but I just want to reiterate that there's always a solution, and it's important that you're comfortable with that solution. If the doctor gives you a solution or wants to give you a chemical Band-Aid or a prescription or whatever, you don't need to say yes. It's not the end all.
But rather than listening to a singular person's advice, go back to the drawing board, say, how can I figure this out not on my own, but how can I figure this out through a holistic lens? And I agree. Western medicine's great for treating acute symptoms. I think that when we get into more chronic things, that it really does come down to like the primary three, like sleep, exercise, and nutrition. And if you get those right, you're 98% of the way there to optimizing and maximizing what you're able to get out of your life.
100%. I agree.
Sam, this has been incredible.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.